Greetings. This is video number 11 of the poem Savitri by Sri Aurobindo. And this is what I'm about to read is Canto 11 of Book 2, The Kingdoms and Godheads of the Greater Mind. There ceased the limits of the laboring power, but being and creation ceased not there. For thought transcends the circles of mortal mind. It is greater than its earthly instrument. The Godhead crammed into mind's narrow space escapes on every side into some vast that is a passage to infinity. It moves eternal in the Spirit's field, a runner towards the far spiritual light, a child and servant of the Spirit's force. But mind too falls back from a nameless peak. His being stretched beyond the sight of thought, for the Spirit is eternal and unmade, and not by thinking was its greatness born. And not by thinking can its knowledge come. It knows itself, and in itself it lives. It moves where no thought is, nor any form. Its feet are steadied upon finite things. Its wings can dare to cross the infinite. Arriving into his ken, a wonder space of great and marvelous meetings called his steps, where thought leaned on a vision beyond thought, and shaped a world from the unthinkable. On peaks imagination cannot tread, in the horizons of a tireless sight, under a blue veil of eternity, the splendors of ideal mind were seen, outstretched across the boundaries of things known. Origin of the little that we are, instinct with the endless more that we must be, a prop of all that human strength enacts, creator of hopes by earth unrealized, it spreads beyond the expanding universe. It wings beyond the boundaries of dream. It overtops the ceiling of life's soar. Awake in a luminous sphere unbound by thought, exposed to omniscient immensities, it casts on our world its great crowded influences, its speed that outstrips the ambling of the hours, its force that strides invincibly through time, its mights that bridge the gulf twixt man and God, its lights that combat ignorance and death. In its vast ambit of ideal space, where beauty and mightiness walk hand in hand, the Spirit's truths take form as living gods, and each can build a world in its own right. In an air which doubt and error cannot mark with the stigmata of their deformity, in communion with the musing privacy of a truth that sees in unerring light, where the sight falters not, nor wanders thought, exempt from our world's exorbitant tax of tears, dreaming its luminous creation's gaze on the ideas that people eternity. In a sunblaze of joy and absolute power, above, the masters of the ideal, thrown in sessions of secure felicity, in regions of illumined certitude. Far are those realms from our labor and our yearning and call. Perfection's reign in hallowed sanctuary closed to the uncertain thoughts of human mind, remote from the turbid tread of mortal life. But since our secret selves are next of kin, a breath of unattained divinity visits the imperfect earth on which we toil. Across a gleaming ether's golden laugh, a light falls on our vexed, unsatisfied lives. A thought comes down from the ideal worlds, and moves us to new model even here some image of their greatness and appeal, and wonder beyond the ken of mortal hope. Amid the heavy sameness of the days, and contradicted by the human law, a faith in things that are not and must be, lives comrade of this world's delight and pain, the child of the secret soul's forbidden desire, born of its amour with eternity. Our spirits break free from their environment. The future brings its face of miracle near. Its Godhead looks at us with present eyes. Acts deemed impossible grow natural. We feel the hero's immortality, the courage and the strength death cannot touch. Awaken limbs that are mortal, hearts that fail, and we move by the rapid impulse of a will that scorns the tardy trudge of mortal time. These promptings come not from an alien sphere. Ourselves are citizens of that mother state. Adventurers, we have colonized matter's night. But now our rights are barred, our passports void. We live self-exiled from our heavenlier home. An errant ray from the immortal mind accepted the earth's blindness and became our human thought, servant of ignorance. An exile, laborer on this unsure globe, captured and driven in life's nescient grasp, hampered by obscure cell and treacherous nerve, it dreams of happier states and nobler powers. The natural privilege of unfallen gods, recalling still its old lost sovereignty. Amid earth's mist and fog and mud and stone, it still remembers its exalted sphere and the high city of its splendid birth. A memory steals in from lost heavens of truth. A wide release comes near, a glory calls, a might looks out, an estranged felicity. In glamorous passages of half-veiled light, wandering, a brilliant shadow of itself, this quick, uncertain leader of blind gods, this tender of small lamps, this minister serf hired by a mind and body for earth use, forgets its work mid crude realities. It recovers its renounced imperial right. It wears once more a purple robe of thought, and knows itself the ideal seer and king, communicant and prophet of the unborn, heir to delight and immortality. All things are real, that here are only dreams. In our unknown depths sleeps their reserve of truth. On our unreached heights they reign and come to us in thought and muse, trailing their robes of light. But our dwarf will and cold pragmatic sense admit not the celestial visitants, awaiting us on the ideal's peaks, or guarded in our secret self unseen, yet flash sometimes across the awakened soul, hide from our lives their greatness, beauty, power. Our present feels sometimes their regal touch, our future strives towards their luminous thrones. Out of spiritual secrecy they gaze, immortal footfalls in mind's corridors sound. Our souls can climb into the shining plains, the breaths from which they came can be our home. His privilege regained of shadowless sight, the thinker entered the immortal's air, and drank again his pure and mighty source. Immutable in rhythmic calm and joy, he saw, sovereignly free in limitless light, the unfallen plains, the thought-created worlds, where knowledge is the leader of the act, and matter is of thinking substance made. Feeling, a heaven bird poised on dreaming wings, answers truth's call as to a parent's voice. Form luminous leaps from the all-shaping beam, and will is a conscious chariot of the gods, and life, a splendor stream of musing force, carries the voices of the mystic suns. A happiness it brings of whispered truth. There runs in its flow, honeying the bosom of space, a laughter from the immortal heart of bliss, and the unfathomed joy of timelessness, the sound of wisdom's murmur in the unknown, and the breath of an unseen infinity. In gleaming clarities of amethyst air, the chainless and omnipotent spirit of mind brooded on the blue lotus of the idea, a gold supernal sun of timeless truth, poured down the mystery of the eternal ray. Through a silence quivering with the word of light on an endless ocean of discovery, far off he saw the joining hemispheres. On meditation's mounting edge of trance, great stairs of thought climbed up to unborn heights, where time's last ridges touch eternity's skies, and nature speaks to the spirit's absolute. A triple realm of ordered thought came first, a small beginning of immense ascent. Above were bright ethereal skies of mind, a packed and endless soar as if sky pressed sky, buttressed against the void on bastioned light. The highest strove to neighbor eternity, the largest widened into the infinite. But though immortal, mighty, and divine, the first realms were close and kin to human mind. Their deities shape our greater thinking's roads. A fragment of their puissance can be ours. These breadths were not too broad for our souls to range. These heights were not too high for human hope. A triple flight led to this triple world. Although abrupt for common strength to tread, its upward slope looks down on our earth poise, on a slant not too precipitously steep. One could turn back, traveling deep descending lines, to commune with the mortal's universe. The mighty wardens of the ascending stair, who intercede with the all-creating Word, there waited for the pilgrim heaven-bound soul. Holding the thousand keys of the beyond, they proffered their knowledge to the climbing mind, and filled the life with thought's immensities. The prophet hierophants of the occult law, the flame-bright hierarchs of the divine truth, interpreters between man's mind and God's. They bring the immortal fire to mortal men. Iridescent, bodying the invisible, the guardians of the eternal's bright degrees, fronted the sun in radiant phalanxes. Afar they seem a symbol imagery, illumined originals of the shadowy script, in which our sight transcribes the ideal ray, or icons figuring a mystic truth, but nearer, gods and living presences. A march of friezes marked the lowest steps, fantastically ornate and richly small. They had room for the whole meaning of a world, symbols minute of its perfection's joy, strange beasts that were nature's forces made alive, and, wakened to the wonder of his role, man grown an image undefaced of God, and objects the fine coin of beauty's reign. But wide the terrains were those levels serve. In front of the ascending epiphany, world-time's enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, the masters of things actual, lords of the hours, playmates of youthful nature and child God, creators of matter by hid stress of mind, whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fantasy of brute events, stood there, a race of young, keen-visioned gods, king-children born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school world-making's mystic play. Archmasons of the eternal thaumaturge, molders and measurers of fragmented space, they have made their plan of the concealed and known, a dwelling house for the invisible king. Obeying the Eternal's deep command, they have built in the material front of things this wide world kindergarten of young souls, where the infant spirit learns through mind and sense to read the letters of the cosmic script and study the body of the cosmic self and search for the secret meaning of the whole. To all that spirit conceives they give a mold, persuading nature into visible moods. They lend a finite shape to infinite things. Each power that leaps from the unmanifest, leaving the largeness of the Eternal's peace, they seized and held by their precision eye, and made a figurant in the cosmic dance. Its free caprice they bound by rhythmic laws, and compelled to accept its posture and its line in the wizardry of an ordered universe. The all-containing was contained in form. Oneness was carved into units measurable, the limitless built into a cosmic sum. Unending space was beaten into a curve. Indivisible time into small minutes cut. The infinitesimal massed to keep secure the mystery of the formless cast into form. Invincibly their craft devised for use the magic of sequent number and sign spell. Designs miraculously potent was caught, laden with beauty and significance, and by the determining mandate of their gaze, figure and quality equating, joined in an inextricable identity. On each event they stamped its curves of law, and its trust and charge of burdened circumstance. A free and divine incident no more, at each moment willed or adventure of the soul, it lengthened a fate-bound mysterious chain, a line foreseen of an immutable plan, one step more in necessity's long march. A term was set for every eager power, restraining its will to monopolize the world. A groove of bronze prescribed for force and act, and shown to each moment its appointed place, forewilled inalterably in the spiral huge time loop, fugitive from eternity. Inevitable their thoughts like links of fate, imposed on the leap and lightning race of mind, and on the frail fortuitous flux of life, and on the liberty of atomic things, immutable cause and adamant consequence. Idea gave up the plastic infinity to which it was born, and now traced out instead small separate steps of chainwork in a plot. Immortal once, now tied to birth and end, torn from its immediacy of errorless sight, knowledge was rebuilt from cells of inference into a fixed body flask and perishable. Thus bound it grew, but could not last, and broke, and to a new thinking's body left its place. A cage for the infinite's great-eyed seraphim thoughts was closed with a crisscross of world laws for bars, and hedged into a curt horizon's arc, the irised vision of the ineffable. A timeless spirit was made the slave of the hours. The unbound was cast into a prison of birth, to make a world that mind could grasp and rule. On an earth which looked towards 1,000 suns, that the created might grow nature's lord, and matter's depths be illumined with a soul, they tied to date and norm and finite scope the million-mysteried movement of the One. Above stood ranked a subtle archangel race, with larger lids and looks that searched the unseen. A light of liberating knowledge shone across the gulfs of silence in their eyes. They lived in the mind and knew truth from within. A sight withdrawn in the concentrated heart could pierce behind the screen of time's results and the rigid cast and shape of visible things. All that escaped conception's narrow noose, vision descried and gripped. Their seeing thoughts filled the blanks left by the seeking sense. High architects of possibility and engineers of the impossible, mathematicians of the infinitudes, and theoricians of unknowable truths, they formulate enigma's postulates and join the unknown to the apparent worlds. Acolytes, they wait upon the timeless power, the cycle of her works investigate, passing her fence of wordless privacy. Their mind could penetrate her occult mind and draw the diagram of her secret thoughts. They read the codes and ciphers she had sealed. Copies they made of all her guarded plans. For every turn of her mysterious course assigned a reason and unchanging rule. The unseen grew visible to student eyes. Explained was the immense inconscious scheme. Audacious lines were traced upon the void. The infinite was reduced to square and cube. Arranging symbol and significance, tracing the curve of a transcendent power, they framed the Kabbalah of the cosmic law, the balancing line discovered of life's technique, and structured her magic and her mystery. Imposing schemes of knowledge on the vast, they clamped to syllogisms of finite thought, the free logic of an infinite consciousness, grammared the hidden rhythms of nature's dance, critiqued the plot of the drama of the worlds, made figure and number a key to all that is. The psychoanalysis of cosmic self was traced, its secret hunted down, and read the unknown pathology of the unique. Assessed was the system of the probable, the hazard of fleeing possibilities to account for the actual's unaccountable sum. Necessity's logarithmic tables drawn, cast into a scheme, the triple act of the one. Unveiled the abrupt, invisible multitude of forces whirling from the hands of chance, seemed to obey some vast imperative. Their tangled motives worked out unity. A wisdom read their mind to themselves unknown. Their anarchy rammed into a formula, and from their giant randomness of force, following the habit of their million paths, distinguishing each faintest line and stroke of a concealed unalterable design, out of the chaos of the invisible's moods derived the calculus of destiny. In its bright pride of universal lore, mind's knowledge overtopped the omniscient's power. The Eternal's winging eagle puissances, surprised in their untracked empyrean, stooped from the gyres to obey the beck of thought. Each mysteried god forced to revealing form, assigned his settled moves in nature's game, zigzagged at the gesture of a chess player will, across the checkerboard of cosmic fate, in the wise sequence of necessity's steps predicted, every act and thought of God, its values weighed by the accountant mind, checked in his mathematized omnipotence, lost its divine aspect of miracle, and was a figure in a cosmic sum. The mighty mother's whims and lightning moods, arisen from her all-wise, unruled delight, in the freedom of her sweet and passionate breast, robbed of their wonder, were chained to a cause and aim. An idol of bronze replaced her mystic shape, that captures the movements of the cosmic vasts, in the sketch precise of an ideal face. Forgotten was her eyelashes' dream print, carrying on their curve infinity's dreams. Lost the alluring marvel of her eyes, the surging wave throbs of her vast sea heart. They bound to a theorem of ordered beats. Her deep designs, which from herself she had veiled, bowed, self-revealed in their confessional. For the birth and death of the worlds they fixed a date. Thy diameter of infinity was drawn, measured the distant arc of the unseen heights, and visualized the plumbless, viewless depths, till all seemed known that in all time could be. All was coerced by number, name, and form. Nothing was left untold, incalculable. Yet was their wisdom circled with a naught. Truths they could find and hold, but not the one truth. The highest was to them unknowable. By knowing too much, they missed the whole to be known. The fathomless heart of the world was left unguessed, and the transcendent kept its secrecy. In a sublimer and more daring soar to the wide summit of the triple stairs, bare steps climbed up like flaming rocks of gold, burning their way to a pure absolute sky. August and few, the sovereign kings of thought, have made of space their wide, all-seeing gaze, surveying the enormous work of time, a breadth of all-containing consciousness, supported being in a still embrace. Intercessors with a luminous unseen, they capped in the long passage to the world the imperatives of the Creator Self, obeyed by unknowing earth, by conscious heaven. Their thoughts are partners in its vast control. The great all-ruling consciousness is there, and mind unwitting serves a higher power. It is a channel, not the source of all. The cosmos is no accident in time. There is a meaning in each play of chance. There is a freedom in each face of fate. A wisdom knows and guides the mysteried world. A truth gaze shapes its beings and events. A world self-born upon creation's heights, voice of the eternal in the temporal spheres, prophet of the seeings of the absolute, sows the idea's significance in form, and from that seed the growth of time arise. On peaks beyond our ken the all-wisdom sits. A single and infallible look comes down. A silent touch from the supernal's air awakes to ignorant knowledge in its acts the secret power in the inconscient depths, compelling the blinded Godhead to emerge, determining necessity's new dance as she passes through the circuit of the hours and vanishes from the chase of finite eyes down circling vistas of aeonic time. The unseizable forces of the cosmic whirl bear in their Bacchant limbs the fixity of an original foresight that is fate. Even nature's ignorance is truth's instrument. Our struggling ego cannot change her course. Yet is it a conscious power that moves in us. A seed idea is parent of our acts, and destiny the unrecognized child of will. Infallible by truth's directing gaze, all creatures hear their secret self disclose. Forced to become what in themselves they hide. For he who is grows manifest in the years, and the slow Godhead shut within the cell climbs from the plasm to immortality. But hidden, but denied to mortal grasp, mystic, ineffable is the Spirit's truth, unspoken, caught only by the Spirit's eye. When naked of ego and mind it hears the voice, it looks through light to ever greater light and sees eternity and sphering life. This greater truth is foreign to our thoughts. Where a free wisdom works, they seek for a rule. Or we only see a tripping game of chance, or a labor in chains forced by bound nature's law, an absolutism of dumb unthinking power. Audacious in their sense of God-born strength, they dared to grasp with their thought truth's absolute. By an abstract purity of godless sight, by a percept nude, intolerant of forms, they brought to mind what mind could never reach, and hoped to conquer truth's supernal base. A stripped imperative of conceptual phrase, architectonic and inevitable, translated the unthinkable into thought. A silver-winged fire of naked subtle sense, an ear of mind withdrawn from the outward's rhymes, discovered the seed sounds of the eternal word, the rhythm and music heard that built the worlds, and seized in things the bodiless will to be. The illimitable they measured with numbers' rods, and traced the last formula of limited things, in transparent systems bodied termless truths, the timeless made accountable to time, and valued the incommensurable supreme. To park and hedge the ungrasped infinitudes, they erected absolute walls of thought and speech, and made a vacuum to hold the one. In their sight they drove towards an empty peak, a mighty space of cold and sunlit air, to unify their task, excluding life, which cannot bear the nakedness of the vast. They made a cipher of a multitude. In negation found the meaning of the all, and in nothingness the absolute positive. A single law simplest the cosmic theme, compressing nature into a formula. Their Titan labor made all knowledge one, a mental algebra of the spirit's ways, an abstract of the living divinity. Here the mind's wisdom stopped. It felt complete, for nothing more was left to think or know. In a spiritual zero it sat throned and took its vast silence for the ineffable. This was the play of the bright gods of thought, attracting into time the timeless light, imprisoning eternity in the hours. This they have planned, to snare the feet of truth in an aureate net of concept and of phrase, and keep her captive for the thinker's joy in his little world built of immortal dreams. There must she dwell mirrored in the human mind, an empress, prisoner in her subject's house, adored and pured and still on his heart's throne, his splendid property cherished and apart, in the wall of silence of his secret muse, immaculate in white virginity, the same forever and forever one, he worshipped changeless goddess through all time. Or else, a faithful consort of his mind, assenting to his nature and his will, she sanctions and inspires his words and acts, prolonging their resonance through the listening years. Companion and recorder of his march, crossing a brilliant tract of thought and life, carved out the eternity of time. A witness to his high triumphant star, her Godhead servitor to a crowned idea, he shall dominate by her a prostrate world, a warrant for his deeds and his beliefs. She attests his right divine to lead and rule. Or as a lover clasps his one beloved, Godhead of his life's worship and desire, icon of his heart-soul idolatry, she now is his and must live for him alone. She has invaded him with her sudden bliss, an exhaustless marvel in his happy grasp, an allurement, a caught ravishing miracle. Her now he claims after long rapt pursuit, the one joy of his body and soul. Inescapable is her divine appeal, her immense possession and undying thrill, an intoxication and an ecstasy, the passion of her self-revealing moods, a heavenly glory and variety, makes ever new her body to his eyes, or else repeats the first enchantment's touch, the luminous rapture of her mystic breasts and beautiful, vibrant limbs, a living field of throbbing new discovery without end. A new beginning flowers in the word and laugh. A new charm brings back the old extreme delight. He is lost in her, she is his heaven here. Truth smiled upon the gracious golden game. Out of her hushed eternal spaces leaned the great and boundless goddess, fain to yield the sunlit sweetness of her secrecies. Incarnating her beauty in his clasp, she gave for a brief kiss her immortal lips, and drew to her bosom one glorified mortal head. She made earth her home, for whom heaven was too small. In a human breast her occult presence lived. He carved from his own self his figure of her. She shaped her body to a mind's embrace. Into thought's narrow limits she has come. Her greatness she has suffered to be pressed into the little cabin of the idea, the closed room of a lonely thinker's grasp. She has lowered her heights to the stature of our souls, and dazzled our lids with her celestial gaze. Thus each is satisfied with his high gain, and thinks himself beyond mortality blessed, a king of truth upon his separate throne. To her possessor in the field of time, a single splendor caught from her glory seems the one true light, her beauty's glowing whole. But thought nor word can seize eternal truth. The whole world lives in a lonely ray of her sun. In our thinking's close and narrow lamplit house, the vanity of our shut mortal mind dreams that the chains of thought have made her ours, but we only play with our own brilliant bonds. Tying her down, it is ourselves we tie. In our hypnosis by one luminous point, we see not what small figure of her we hold. We feel not her inspiring boundlessness. We share not her immortal liberty. Thus it is even with the seer and the sage, for still the human limits the divine. Out of our thoughts we must leap up to sight, breathe her divine illimitable air, her simple vast supremacy confess, dare to surrender to her absolute. Then the unmanifest reflects his form in the still mind as in living glass. The timeless ray descends into our hearts, and we are wrapped into eternity. For truth is wider, greater than her forms. 1,000 icons they have made of her, and find her in the idols they adore, but she remains herself and infinite. That is the end of Canto 11 of Book 2. Canto 12 of Book 2, The Heavens of the Ideal. Always the ideal beckons from afar, awakened by the touch of the unseen, deserting the boundary of things achieved, aspired the strong discoverer, tireless thought, revealing at each step a luminous world. It left known summits for the unknown peaks. Impassioned, it sought the lone, unrealized truth. It longed for the light that knows not death and birth. Each stage of the soul's remote ascent was built into a constant heaven felt always here. At each pace of the journey marvelous, a new degree of wonder and of bliss, a new rung formed in being's mighty stair. A great wide step trembling with jeweled fire, as if a burning spirit quivered there. upholding with his flame the immortal hope, as if a radiant God had given his soul that he might feel the tread of pilgrim feet mounting in haste to the Eternal's house. At either end of each effulgent stair, the heavens of the ideal mind were seen in a blue lucency of dreaming space, like strips of brilliant sky clinging to the moon. On one side glimmered hue on floating hue, a glory of sunrise breaking on the soul, in a tremulous rapture of the heart's insight, and the spontaneous bliss that beauty gives, the lovely kingdoms of the deathless rose. Above the spirit cased in mortal sense are superconscious realms of heavenly peace, below the unconscious sullen dim abyss. Behind our life, the deathless rose. Across the covert air the spirit breathes, a body of the cosmic beauty and joy unseen, unguessed by the blind suffering world. Climbing from nature's deep surrendered heart, it blooms forever at the feet of God, fed by life's sacrificial mysteries. Here too its bud is born in human breasts. Then by a touch, a presence, or a voice, the world is turned into a temple ground, and all discloses the unknown beloved. In an outburst of heavenly joy and ease, life yields to the divinity within, and gives the rapture offering of its all, and the soul opens to felicity. A bliss is felt that never can wholly cease, a sudden mystery of secret grace flowers, goldening our earth of red desire. All the high gods who hid their visages from the soiled passionate ritual of our hopes reveal their names and their undying powers. A fiery stillness wakes the slumbering cells, a passion of the flesh becoming spirit, and marvelously is fulfilled at last the miracle for which our life was made. A flame in a white voiceless cupola is seen, and faces of immortal light, the radiant limbs that know not birth and death, the breasts that suckle the firstborn of the sun, the wings that crowd thought's ardent silences, the eyes that look into spiritual space. Our hidden centers of celestial force open like flowers to a heavenly atmosphere. Mind pauses thrilled with the supernal ray, and even this transient body then can feel ideal love and flawless happiness, and laughter of the heart's sweetness and delight, freed from the rude and tragic hold of time, and beauty and the rhythmic feet of the hours. This in high realms touches immortal kind. What here is in the bud has blossomed there. There is the secrecy of the house of flame, the blaze of godlike thought and golden bliss, the rapt idealism of heavenly sense. There are the wonderful voices, the sun laugh, a gurgling eddy in rivers of God's joy, and the mysteried vineyards of the gold moon wine, all the fire and sweetness of which hardly here a brilliant shadow visits mortal life. Although our witness there the joys of time, pressed on the bosom the immortal's touch is felt, heard are the flutings of the infinite. Here upon earth are early awakenings, moments that tremble in an air divine, and groan upon the yearning of her soil. Time's sunflowers gaze at gold eternity. There are the imperishable beatitudes. There are the imperishable beatitudes. A million lotuses swaying on one stem, world after colored and ecstatic world climbs towards some far unseen epiphany. On the other side of the eternal stairs, the mighty kingdoms of the deathless flame aspired to reach the being's absolutes. Out of the sorrow and darkness of the world, out of the depths where life and thought were tombed, lonely mounts up to heaven the deathless flame. In a veiled nature's hallowed secrecies, it burns forever on the altar mind. Its priests the souls of dedicated gods, humanity its house of sacrifice. Once kindled, never can its flaming cease, a fire along the mystic paths of earth. It rises through the mortal's hemisphere, till, borne by runners of the day and dusk, it enters the occult eternal light, and clamors whitening to the invisible throne. Its worlds are steps of an ascending force, a dream of giant contours, titan lines, homes of unfallen and illumined might, heavens of unchanging good, pure and unborn, heights of the grandeur of truth's ageless ray. As in a symbol sky they start to view, and call our souls into a vaster air. On their summits they bear up the sleepless flame, dreaming of a mysterious beyond, transcendent of the paths of fate and time. They point above themselves with index peaks, through a pale sapphire ether of gold mind, of God mind, towards some gold infinite's apocalypse. A thunder rolling mid the hills of God, tireless, severe is their tremendous voice. Exceeding us, to exceed ourselves they call, and bid us rise incessantly above. Far from our eager reach those summits live, too lofty for our mortal strength and height. Hardly in a dire ecstasy of toil, climbed by the spirit's naked athlete will. Austere, intolerant, they claim from us efforts too lasting for our mortal nerve. Our hearts cannot cleave to, nor our flesh support. Only the eternal strength in us can dare to attempt the immense adventure of that climb, and the letting go of all we cherish here. Our human knowledge is a candle burnt on a dim altar to a sun-vast truth. Man's virtue, a coarse-spun, ill-fitting dress, apparels wooden images of good. Passionate and blinded, bleeding, stained with mire, his energy stumbles towards a deathless force. An imperfection dogs our highest strengths. Portions and pale reflections are our share. Happy the worlds that have not felt our fall, where will is one with truth, and good with power. Impoverished not by earth-mind's indigence, they keep God's natural breath of mightiness, his bare, spontaneous, swift intensities. There is his great transparent mirror, self, and there his sovereign autarky of bliss, in which immortal natures have their part, heirs and co-sharers of divinity. He through the ideal's kingdoms moved at will, accepted their beauty and their greatness bore, partook of the glories of their wonder fields, but passed nor stayed beneath their splendor's rule. All there was an intense but partial light, in each a seraph-winged, high-browed idea, united all knowledge by one master thought, persuaded all action to one golden sense, all power subjected to a single power, and made a world where it could reign alone, an absolute ideal's perfect home. Insignia of their victory and their faith, they offered to the traveler at their gates a quenchless flame or an unfading flower, emblem of a high kingdom's privilege, a glorious, shining angel of the way, presented to the seeking of the soul, the sweetness and the might of an idea, each deemed truth's intimate fount and summit force, the heart of the meaning of the universe, perfection's key, passport to paradise. Yet were there regions where these absolutes met, and made a circle of bliss with married hands. Light stood embraced by light, fire wedded fire. But none in the other would his body lose. To find his soul in the world's single soul, a multiplied rapture of infinity. Onward he passed to a diviner sphere. There, joined in a common greatness, light and bliss, all high and beautiful and desirable powers, forgetting their difference and their separate reign, became a single multitudinous whole. Above the parting of the roads of time, above the silence and its thousandfold word, in the immutable and inviolate truth, forever united and inseparable, the radiant children of eternity dwell on the wide spirit height where all are one. The radiant children of eternity dwell on the wide spirit height where all are one. That is the end of Canto 12 of Book 2. Canto 13 of Book 2, In the Self of Mind. At last there came a bare indifferent sky, where silence listened to the cosmic voice, but answered nothing to a million calls. The soul's endless question met with no response. An abrupt conclusion ended eager hopes, a deep cessation in a mighty calm, a finish line on the last page of thought, and a margin and a blank of wordless peace. There paused the climbing hierarchy of worlds. He stood on a wide arc of summit space, alone with an enormous self of mind, which held all life in a corner of its vasts. Omnipotent, immobile, and aloof, in the world which sprang from it, it took no part. It gave no heed to the paeans of victory. It was indifferent to its own defeats. It heard the cry of grief and made no sign. Impartial fell its gaze on evil and good. It saw destruction come and did not move. An equal cause of things, a lonely seer and master of its multitude of forms, it acted not, but bore all thoughts and deeds, the witness lord of nature's myriad acts, consenting to the movements of her force. His mind reflected this vast quietism. This witness hush is the thinker's secret base. Hidden in silent depths the word is formed. From hidden silences the act is born. Into the voiceful mind, the laboring world, in secrecy wraps the seed the eternal sows. Silence, the mystic birthplace of the soul. In God's supreme withdrawn and timeless hush, a seeing self and potent energy met. The silence knew itself and thought took form. Self-made from the dual power creation rose. In the still self he lived and it in him. In mute immemorial listening depths, its vastness and its stillness were his own. One being with it he grew, wide, powerful, free. One being with it he grew, wide, powerful, free. Apart, unbound, he looked on all things done, as one who builds his own imagined scenes and loses not himself in what he sees. Spectator of a drama self-conceived, he looked on the world and watched its motive thoughts, with the burden of luminous prophecy in their eyes, its forces with their feet of wind and fire, arisen from the dumbness in his soul. All now he seemed to understand and know. Desire came not, nor any gust of will. The great perturbed inquirer lost his task. Nothing was asked nor wanted any more. There he could stay, the self, the silence one. His soul had peace, it knew the cosmic whole. Then suddenly a luminous finger fell on all things seen or touched or heard or felt, and showed his mind that nothing could be known. That must be reached from which all knowledge comes. The septic ray disrupted all that seems and smote at the very roots of thought and sense. In the universe of nescience they have grown, aspiring towards a superconscious sun, playing in shine and rain from heavenlier skies. They never can win however high their reach, or overpass however keen their probe. A doubt corroded even the means to think. Distrust was thrown upon mind's instruments. All that it takes for reality's shining coin, proved fact, fixed inference, deduction clear, firm theory, assured significance, appeared as frauds upon time's credit bank, or assets valueless in truth's treasury. And ignorance on an uneasy throne, travestied with a fortuitous sovereignty, a figure of knowledge garbed in dubious words, and tinsel thought forms brightly inadequate. A laborer in the dark, dazzled by half-light, what it knew was an image in a broken glass. What it saw was real, but its sight untrue. All the ideas in its vast repertory were like the mutterings of a transient cloud that spent itself in sound and left no trace. A frail house hanging in uncertain air, the thin ingenious web round which it moves, put out a while on the tree of the universe, and gathered up into itself again, was only a trap to catch life's insect food. Winged thoughts that flutter fragile in brief light, but dead, once captured in fixed forms of mind, aims puny but looming large in man's small scale, flickers of imagination's brilliant gauze, and cobweb-wrapped beliefs alive no more. The magic hut of built-up certitudes, made out of glittering dust and bright moonshine, in which it shrines its image of the real, collapsed into the nescience whence it rose. Only a gleam was there of symbol facts that shrouded the mystery lurking in their glow, and falsehoods based on hidden realities by which they live until they fall from time. Our mind is a house haunted by the slain past, ideas soon mummified, ghosts of old truths, God's spontaneities tied with formal strings, and packed into drawers of reason's trim bureau. A grave of great lost opportunities, or an office for misuse of soul and life, and all the waste man makes of heaven's gifts, and all his squanderings of nature's store, a stage for the comedy of ignorance. The world seemed a long aeonic failure scene. All sterile grew, no base was left secure. Assailed by the edge of the convicting beam, the builder reason lost her confidence in the successful sleight and turn of thought that makes the soul the prisoner of a phrase. Its highest wisdom was a brilliant guess, its mighty structured science of the worlds a passing light on being's surfaces. There was nothing there but a schema drawn by sense, a substitute for eternal mysteries, a scrawl figure of reality, a plan and elevation by the architect word, imposed upon the semblances of time. Existence's self was shadowed by a doubt. Almost it seemed a lotus leaf afloat on a nude pool of cosmic nothingness. This great spectator and creator mind was only some half-seeing's delegate, a veil that hung between the soul and light, an idol, not the living body of God. Even the still spirit that looks upon its works was some pale front of the unknowable. A shadow seemed the wide and witness self, its liberation and immobile calm, a void recoil of being from time-made things, not the self-vision of eternity. Deep peace was there, but not the nameless force. Our sweet and mighty mother was not there, who gathers to her bosom her children's lives, her clasp that takes the world into her arms. In the fathomless rapture of the infinite, the bliss that is creation's splendid grain, or the white passion of God ecstasy that laughs in the blaze of the boundless heart of love, a greater spirit than the self of mind must answer to the questioning of his soul, for here was no firm clue and no sure road. High-climbing pathways ceased in the unknown, and artist's sight constructed the beyond in contrary patterns and conflicting hues. A part experience fragmented the whole. He looked above, but all was blank and still. A sapphire firmament of abstract thought escaped into a formless vacancy. He looked below, but all was dark and mute. A noise was heard between of thought and prayer, a strife, a labor without end or pause. A vain and ignorant seeking raised its voice. A rumor and a movement and a call, a foaming mass, a cry innumerable, rolled ever upon the ocean surge of life along the coasts of mortal ignorance. On its unstable and enormous breast, beings and forces, forms, ideas like waves jostled for figure and supremacy, and rose and rose again in time. And at the bottom of the sleepless stir, a nothingness parent of the struggling worlds, a huge creator death, a mystic void, forever sustaining the irrational cry, forever excluding the supernal word, motionless, refusing question and response, reposed beneath the voices and the march, the dim inconscience dumb in certitude. Two firmaments of darkness and light oppose their limits to the spirit's walk. It moved, veiled in from self's infinity, in a world of beings and momentary events, where all must die to live and live to die. Immortal by renewed mortality, it wandered in the spiral of its acts, or ran around the cycles of its thought, yet was no more than its original self, and knew no more than when it first began. To be was a prison, extinction the escape. And I would add, thus spoke the childless father. But that's just me. That's the end of video 11, the end of Canto 13 of Book 2.